and he's an economist who is going to unpack what may come out of the MPC meeting tomorrow, as Lesetja Kganyago is going to announce that the Reserve Bank Governor, by the way. Thank you very much for joining us.
It's a pleasure to be here.
Yeah, we always say compliments before January ends, isn't it?
It's a really good point, but I think the year is getting a little bit old now.
Yeah, but not old enough for people to start thinking about what their year is going to look like in the next 4 quarters. Now, how are we going to start the year? On a back foot, on a low note, or how are things looking?
It's a really good point. So I think in terms of economic activity, we have not seen any data as yet to give us a very strong indication of what 2018 is going to look like. But expectations are that growth is going to be a little bit better this year compared to last year. I think the general estimate is that growth probably averaged around 0.9% last year. And I think expectations are that it should be a little bit better this year to about 1.4%, 1.5%. It's still not strong enough for us to make a meaningful impact on our unemployment situation, but certainly is the right kind of trend.
Well, things were not looking good this year because we were coming out of a drought, and it was attributed to the high food price inflation that we saw last year. But since the rain, things were looking good, but we have seen food prices not going down.
Yeah, it's a good point. I think food price inflation has actually come down quite substantially. I think, so when you speak to consumers on the street, the sense is always that prices tend to always go up, which is true, but it's the rate at which they are going up that we're talking about. So if you look at food price inflation in particular, at the end of 2016, we're standing at 11%. So that rate was actually quite high. But by November, we had come down quite substantially to about 5.2%. So it's pretty clear that some of the benefits of the end of the drought have certainly, sort of fed through to food prices. And I think we've seen that in headline inflation as well.
Well, as we see in the graph, the Reserve Bank target band of between 3% and 6% was well intact until things changed when it became 6.75%. How are we expecting now? How are we looking at things in terms of whether the trajectory will be upwards or downwards?
Look, I think for us in terms of the inflation outlook, our expectation is that we're probably going to reach a low point in the first quarter of this year at around 4.3%. But after that, we actually think that headline inflation will begin to rise, but rise only very gradually. And we're thinking that we could actually end this year at around just above 5%. But even that would still keep us quite comfortably within the sub-target range that the Monetary Policy Committee sort of considers when they think about what to do to interest rates.
So going forward, the business activity index had a very slight fall. Are we likely to see confidence being lifted up?
Yeah, I think you're right. We saw a bit of a decline in December, but I think it's still a bit early to make very strong conclusions about what that actually means for the year ahead, because as you know, around year-end data tend to be quite volatile. I think there is hope that some of the recent political developments that we've had in South Africa are going to result in much lower political uncertainty going forward, and that is something that could be positive for business confidence, because as you know, it's something that we've been lacking for a very long time in South Africa, and with that, that's something that you could result in increased private sector investment, and with that slightly better growth.
Do you feel the state of optimism regarding how people are projecting political certainty, where the market had priced in the election of Cyril Ramaphosa as ANC president, and now the news that well, the Hawks are going after the Guptas, this kind of news direction, what do you make out of it?
Look, I think what the market is looking for is policy certainty, and I think the challenge here is that the political uncertainty that we've had to contend with for the past little while, I think has actually resulted in policy inertia. So the hope is that the changes that have come about are going to result in a faster policy action reform that's going to be supportive of economic growth, supportive of private sector investment. So I think that is what the hope really is about. But as is always the case, what we have to wait for it's actually clear policy intervention that actually delivers those results.
Let's look at other factors. When you look at the exogenous factors regarding international oil prices, we've seen the oil price shoot up a little bit now, and it's knocking on the door of the $70 mark.
Yeah, it's quite high, it's quite elevated, but I think the good thing is that for us South African consumers, that has actually been cushioned to some degree by the stronger rand, which is why we had a petrol price cut in early January, and at current trends it's looking like we're going to get another petrol price cut again in early Feb. But look, if you have the rand reversing, also beginning to weaken, with all prices remaining at these kinds of levels, it certainly wouldn't bode well for fuel prices, but as headline inflation as well.
On the international front, again, when we're looking at the meeting of WEF in Davos, and Cyril Ramaphosa having to go there and represent the country, and again, you look at the statements by the likes of U.S. President Donald Trump regarding, that I don't want to even mention because it's irking many people. Well, what do you make out of all these exogenous factors that the MPC has to look into after factoring them in? Lesetja Kganyago has to make an announcement tomorrow. As you know, he normally unpacks them.
It's a really good point. So I think what we have seen is a strengthening actually in the global economy. I think last year we probably would have managed about 3.7% in growth. I think something close to that is still possible this year. We're seeing faster growth in Europe. We're seeing global trading volumes also pick up. But the issues that you highlight, I think, are an important reminder that there are always risks in this environment, some of which are economic, but some of which are also political. So the U.S. political situation is only one example. You still have the unresolved Brexit situation, for instance, and I think it's just some of those risks that you have on the horizon, even though the global growth story itself is certainly favorable for us.
So interest rates announcement tomorrow, what are you expecting?
Look, January is always a very difficult month for most of us, and I think we always look to the SARB early Jan for a little bit of relief, but I don't think that there's going to be a lot of good news on that front, unfortunately. We're expecting the Reserve Bank to keep rates on hold. And to get a sense of why that might be the case is, we just have to look at the November MPC statement. And in there, they were very clear that they were concerned about the political uncertainty, they were concerned about the fiscal outlook, they were concerned about the South Africa credit rating story. Now, if you think about all of those risks, there are two very important ones that actually still linger for South Africa, and maybe the two big ones, right? It's the fiscal situation, right? It's still not very clear what Minister Gigaba is going to table in February, and whether that will be decisive enough in terms of stabilizing medium-term debt. And linked to that is the credit rating story. Moody's currently has us on review for a downgrade. It's still a little bit unclear what they're going to do. If they do downgrade us, it could have a significant impact on South African financial markets, and we could see the rand actually weaken quite substantially, which would not bode well for the inflation outlook. So we think against that backdrop, what you're probably going to see is the South African Reserve Bank's MPC remaining cautious and probably keeping the interest rates unchanged.
All right. It looks like analysts are singing from the same hymn book at the beginning of the year, but we'll hold your words to it.
Thank you very much for having me.
Thank you. Miyelani Maluleke, who is our analyst for today from ABSA. He's an economist who has been giving us his perspective on the outlook for 2018 and the Reserve Bank's announcement tomorrow. All right, we're going to take a break now. When we come back, we'll be having the headlines with Cash.